Hello friends and welcome to my channel. The skirt and vest fabrics for the Askola folk costume I'm constructing are very densely woven wool linen fabric called parkkumi in Finnish. The warp is linen and the weft is wool in 5 different colors. I have never woven a fabric like this, but how hard could it be? So I went and bought myself a big loom from the local online flea market and brought it home. Now, who wouldn't want this taking space in their living room? I don't have a warping mill, so I headed for the weaving center to get used theirs. My warp yarn is linen colored cotton. Historically, linen would have been used, but linen is much harder to use as it tends to break and needs constant moistening. Thus, I settled for cotton. The next thing to do was to choose the right colors for the wool. I had weaving instructions for the fabrics, but the yarn used in the instructions was discontinued. Luckily, I got a strip of both skirt and vest fabric to do comparisons with. The closest colorway on paper wasn't actually that close. This is a little too raspberry colored than warm orangey yellow I needed. The dark reds seemed either too dark or too light. But comparing yarn to fabric isn't easy, so I ended up ripping out a few yarns from the fabric to help with the comparison. Now it was much easier to decide what colors to use. I got my yarns from Föreningen in Helsinki. Here they are waiting for me to start. But first, I need to warp my loom. Next, it's time to use some child labor. Now I need to weave the warp ends through each of the 1200 heddles. It took about 2 days. Okay, so I don't remember which was the last time I filmed, but I spent a couple of days getting this loom fixed up. So my warp is here. I've tied it on this stick thing, and then I spent so much time getting all the cords tied right down here, but now it's working. I can open the shed like this, so I can now explain how this works. So come a little bit closer. So I have 4 threadles, and when I press the threadle, one of these heddle bars rises, and this lifts the threads that are threaded through those heddles. Let's see if I can find the first one. No, that's the last one. Oh, here. So this is the first one, so you can see how the pressing the threadle works. And here I have the reed come, and this is used to beat the fabric. I've already done a little bit weaving here, but I did it just with the cotton thread that is used for the warp, just to get this edge even. Also to see that it looks okay, so I don't have any threading errors. Down here, come with me. Underneath here. Hello. Here we are underneath the loom, and here you can see the heddles, and you can see the cords coming down. There are 2 levels of bars, upper ones and lower bars. I am not sure what these are called in English, but these are connected to the heddles and then connected downwards to the threadles. And adjusting all the lengths of these takes time, but now everything is connected. Everything looks nice, and I can start weaving. My yarn comes in a cone like this, and I cut a paper straw in half to get this spool, and I'm using my drill to wrap my yarn for the weaving. This is a knitting needle that just fits inside the paper straw. Yep. And I have this kind of embroidery stand here, and let's see. Basically, the only thing you need is like a chair or something to get the yarn first up, because otherwise it gets stuck. So I bought this for my embroidery work, and because it works, I can use it for this too, because this is really smooth, so the yarn doesn't stick to it. So this way the yarn comes straight from the cone and doesn't get tangled. So I start wrapping my yarn around the spool a few times and then I can start. Like so. Now it's full. Let's just take it this way. Here is the shadow. I just stick it in so that the yarn comes from below and goes through the hole at the side, like so. And I put it in here. This tends to come loose, so I have a bit of tape here. But yeah, and when I weave, it just, the yarn comes from here. Here my warp yarn has broken. It's not too serious. I can take new yarn from the cone, thread it to the place of the broken one. I tie it with the yarn that comes from the warp beam. I weave with this replacement yarn until the end from the warp beam reaches all the way to the fabric edge. I didn't have enough thick linen cord to start with, so I used thinner cord as a replacement. When I got some more of thicker cord, I wanted to fix some of the cords that weren't working properly. So now I can introduce you to some weaving knots that I used in Finland. All of these do the job, but they are easy to untie and adjust when needed. At this time you have probably seen what this shirt will look like when it's ready, so you are probably wiser than me. But it's time for me to start making the vest as well, because I've just finished the skirt fabric yesterday and now it's time to start with the vest fabric. And I'm wearing my fancy Edwardian garments today, so enjoy! The vest fabric doesn't have dark red, so I can get rid of this. And I need to get some salmon colored. I think this is ready now. It took me a few weeks. When did I start? In February? Now it's almost May. So it took me like 2 months to weave this fabric. And I think it's here. As you can see, there's the end of my warp, and the closer to the end I weave, the harder it gets. And if I've calculated this right, this should be enough for the vest. So let's take it off. rid of this. So this is going to be the waistband. Here, this is here the start of the skirt, and this is skirt. Here is 3 meters, and there's like 30 centimeters or 3 meters, but this will shrink a bit. And here is the fabric for the vest. I haven't yet measured it, but let's measure it. So it starts from here. $122, and this will also shrink a bit. But yeah, I'm so happy that it's over. What I need to do next is to get rid of these. So these are the warp yarns that broke. There are quite a lot of them, all in the same place, and I will have to thread them to the wrong side and then weave them in, and then I can moisten this and wrap this to settle for a while. And I think if I can find 2 tubes, I will wet this vest fabric thoroughly, because this is more, it will be a bigger thing if the vest shrinks than if the skirt shrinks. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel. You can find my Ko-fi link down below if you want to support this channel. I thank everyone who has donated. See you soon. Bye!